Hello and welcome back to the Foot Soldiers podcast. As always, my name is Luke. I'm joined here today by Sean and Conrad. It's been almost a month since the last time we recorded an episode, and obviously in that time, quite a few things have happened as it relates to Cavalry. I think I'm just going to get right into it. So starting off, a few weeks ago, Cavalry officially announced the departure of Fraser Aird on a free, the departure of Callum Montgomery for an undisclosed sum to Detroit City, and officially confirmed the departure of Shamit Shome, which is something we did speculate a little bit on last episode, but now that's been confirmed by the club. Those are three obviously important players from the last couple seasons, and especially the title-winning season, who won't be returning for next year. How do we think this impacts the prospects going to next year?
It really looks a little bit rough at the right back position, certainly. Because I don't think Fraser Aird's a 90-minute player anymore, but I also don't think Michael Harms is... He's just not ready, to quote the good old conservative ads about Justin Trudeau back in the day. But Harms, we didn't see him much, if at all. Did he play? I think he played a couple matches for us, but didn't see him a ton. So thrusting him right into the fire, obviously not what I'm hoping to see. But maybe a position that is covered by some of the Swiss Army knives that Tommy tends to bring in. So we'll have to see. And obviously, Fraser is class from the set piece line as well, so you have to wonder who's going to start to take some of those. So that's a big loss. Are you in agreement there, Sean?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. We talked a couple months ago about who were the prime targets this past offseason, and we all thought Shamit Shome and Fraser Aird were two of the highest priorities to sign, and neither are back. So you kind of figured the longer this dragged out that it wasn't going to happen. I'm of the opinion that he's a big loss for the club, maybe a step down from his incredible 2024 season, but he was still an absolute leader on the club. One of our better attacking threats, especially specifically on the wings. And, I think he had at least another year. I think he wanted to be here, and he was committed to the cause. And, it just sounds like maybe there was something about his game they didn't like, or maybe they wanted to go with someone younger, but it really does put in question into next season as to what does right back look like. Do one of these new signings that we'll talk about later fit in there? Is Michael Harms finally ready? I'm a big Michael Harms guy, but it doesn't sound like he's trusted as of yet. So is he going to be trusted in this upcoming season?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that's kind of been said here. I mean, going into the offseason, we talked about like the big three guys who are out of contract, those being obviously Fraser Aird, Shamit Shome, and Ali Musi. And I said all along that Fraser Aird would have been my number one priority in terms of what I viewed as probably the hardest to replace, I think, out of the three in terms of the contribution on and off the pitch. Again, as has been mentioned, Fraser Aird was probably one of our most consistent players, no matter what, always showing up, always giving it all and putting in a shift, and even taking penalties for us at the end of the year, right? He scored our only goal in the final, so that will be our last memory of Fraser Aird, is scoring a goal in the snowy conditions in Ottawa. So that's not a bad way to go out, but yeah. And again, obviously, like, none of us were in the negotiating rooms with Fraser Aird. We can't obviously say for sure what happened there. I do wonder, I think everything always comes down to money with this kind of thing, right? Obviously, this is a salary cap league. And if you consider the fact that a veteran like Fraser Aird, who has the talent that he does, might have been looking for maybe a multi-year deal when the club might not have wanted to offer that, or might have been looking for more money than the club would have been able to offer, and they maybe think they can find a replaceable level right back on the open market, right? So we'll have to see kind of how that goes going to next year. And yeah, as mentioned, Michael Harms, I mean, he's a Calgary guy, you gotta love it, but he's looked fine in his little cameos, but he's never had an extended run of play in the team. And on another center back who's left, this one's maybe a bit more of a surprise because he was still under contract, is Callum Montgomery, leaving on an undisclosed fee, probably a tenner, to Detroit City, where he'll be slotting in for the USL side. So for him, I think it's probably not a bad move.
He goes back to a league he has some experience in. He played, obviously, with the San Diego Loyal prior to that team folding and him coming back up north. So has some experience with the league. And hey, maybe he saw the writing on the wall that he wasn't going to be a full-time starter with this club, with the signing of the tallest center back I think Cavalry has ever signed. So I think maybe that's giving the player an opportunity to go play and make an income as a professional. more than anything. I think it does kind of put our hole in the thought that Tommy was going to play a back three full time next year, but I think it's a good move for the team and the player if he was going to be somebody that's sitting on the bench more often than not.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. In his 3 years here, I think everyone there were no concerns with him starting when you would see him in the starting lineup, and there were no concerns with seeing him out of the starting lineup. And so he was here for 3 years. If I recall correctly, he lost his starting spot every 3 years, even when he was healthy. I believe he lost it to Eric Cobbs in the first year. I believe he lost it to Charlie Trafford at one point in the second year. And then last year he lost it to Tom Field in the playoffs. So he's one of those guys that, solid enough center back, some pretty high profile mistakes. So when you noticed him, you really noticed him. And, I think he'll best be known for a meme that 25 people understand the meaning to, and everyone else is like, what are these losers talking about? So again, I wish him luck in Detroit. I don't think anyone is super disappointed to see him go, given that Klomp and Didic would have been the prime back two, and then Levi Lang could then have he can fit into a back three. He can maybe play a little bit on right back. Maybe he's a little bit of depth if there's an injury. So really the big question for me is, where does Levi Lang fit in? You can still play with a back three with him there. Or does he slot over to right back with Aird's departure, and then that sort of thing
with Harms sort of deal?
Yeah, exactly. He played there a little bit last year, and so maybe they liked what they saw. I remember seeing him in the lineup and thinking, what are they doing playing Lang at right back over Aird? But I think that was the game we went up 2-0 on Ottawa before they came back. So maybe he's better than we think over there. So worth a shot, but it gives them a little bit of flexibility. I know Tommy's big on these players that can slide in to different positions. So but it sounded like Montgomery was the odd man out as soon as Didic was there, and so it looks like that's the case.
As long as we can avoid playing our left winger at right back, our German League 4 left winger, but we'll continue on, because that's a departure we didn't touch on either.
No, we didn't. So yeah, Nicholas Walling, the streets will never forget that game in Langford against Clueless.
We'll never forget.
Yeah,
Matt specifically.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, obviously, like, I was never a big Nicholas Walling guy. I never really felt he was helping the team win. But I will say, compared to other wingers this team has employed in the not too recent past, the one thing you can never say about Nicholas Walling is that you never felt he wasn't trying his hardest. Just that his hardest wasn't very good, unfortunately, for this level. But I will always appreciate someone who just shows up and puts in a shift no matter what, tries to help the team. But yeah, I'm not losing a whole lot of sleep over Nicholas Walling no longer being employed at this club. I don't know about you guys, but
he did have a great free kick against Pacific, I think, early last year, where it was like a 4-0 or 4-1 in the 91st minute or something. And outside of that, kind of the guy where you're like, why is he going at right back? But again, not for lack of effort, just for lack of fit or lack of skill. Yeah.
I like that he finally discovered what toner was with his bleached hair at the end of his last season. But that's about all I'll remember him for, was the whitest bleached blonde hair I've seen outside of U18 hockey players.
Can't hate a guy who dyes his hair. So 17-year-old me is all over this.
Yeah, I did notice, though, in the whatever the lower league German side he signed for, in their announcement, they listed him as a winger, but they mentioned he could also play center back in that one little post. Like, I don't see it personally. Maybe when he was 5 years old, he played a bit of center back, but certainly Tommy never gave him that chance here. And yeah,
another guy above Montgomery in the depth chart, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just down the Cal Montgomery thing, like, I do think it's, like, we have such a logjam at the center back, right? We have obviously Dan Klomp, Amar Didic, Levi Lang, who I think they want to give more minutes to Lang because he's still relatively young. As a center back, you can improve a lot, and he can still be a serviceable player. TikTok star Levi Lang, as I discovered recently.
Well, and that's not the only logjam. They've also brought in a trialist at center back, have Cavalry. The former Nate Ook, Vladislav Stetsdavich, I think is how you say his name. But, it's interesting. We've had these trials for the last few years. And I think this is the first guy they've actually ever announced will be getting an extended trial with the main team. In addition, also announced that they have given 2 opportunities with the club's pathway and 1 on trial with the academy. So getting players from 16 on up to sign up and getting that through the trialist So hey, more people on the depth chart that we need to consider above Cal Montgomery.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense for him to obviously take that chance. And yeah, obviously, as I mentioned, Shamit Shome, I don't think there's a whole lot else to say about that. I think we've kind of talked about that a ton. But yeah, it's officially confirmed that he will not be coming back. So of the big three, Ali Musa is the only one that's still, I don't see a world where he resigns here, but he's technically the only one where it's still unsigned. So yeah, that's the big departures that have come out of Cavalry in the last few weeks. A big arrival in a way of saying would be the new home kit, which was recently announced. Looks a lot like the first year's home kit, just a much more ruby red, obviously designed by Hummel instead of Macron. Sean, I know you're a big kit guy. What do you think of this?
Yeah, at first glance, I really like it. Like when you switch providers from one in Macron, which I personally loved, you get a little nervous, especially seeing some of the ones that were announced before Cavalry's, like Forge's weather mat looking kit, and Pacific's being run over by Vancouver FC's tires. But I've always been had the thought that that first year kit with the proper red would have sold tremendously because we all love that kit. It's the first one. They had a hell of a year that year. And so I thought it would have done well. You add the collar onto it, and in my opinion, it knocks it down a little bit, but not enough to take away from the kit itself. So now we're at the point where, it's just in pre-order. And so it really just comes down to how does it fit? But I think it's one of the better kits in the league so far. They've been very hit or miss, in my opinion, Hummel. Like, I think Supras are some of the nicest kits I've ever seen. I think Toronto's are decent. And then the rest, I guess Halifax's hasn't even been out yet, but Halifax's is a totally different color, and I don't really know what they're doing. They're kind of plain, but yeah, there's some sketchy ones for sure. But I'll give it, out of 5 stars, I'll give it 4.9 just because I'm biased towards Cavalry kits. So.
I would have liked it if it didn't have the like chevron texture in behind it. Me with my relationship to the ownership of this club, love that you have Mark Southern's signature on the back of it, just the sign off of the owner. Some people will probably think that's kitschy. I think it's great because I've seen that name signed on numerous Christmas and birthday cards in the exact same font. And it does look like they're not following the NW or NSL, and they're actually having actual badges on them. They're not Sonon badges. It looks like they're heat and blazing, but an actual separate badge. Classy kit. I also like that they're doing the Canadian Premier League different colors to match the kits on each of them. I think that's a unique touch. And also, hey, we have our own individual sponsor on the sleeve and local Firefly Solar. So kind of interesting. We aren't going to have to peel the CIBC logos off of our sleeves anymore after that sponsorship didn't change. Yeah, as you said, just going to have to wait and see how things fit and how the fabric is. Because I heard there is also the possibility that there's going to be a like pro level kit that comes out at some point, but we'll have to wait and see if that's actually comes true this season or next.
Luke, you as the person who doesn't wear shirts at the game, how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I feel it's a very safe kit. Is probably the best way to say it. Obviously, for the first year of the Hummel sponsorship, they probably didn't want to try anything too crazy. I think it's fine. I think it's a Cavalry kit, which is, obviously it sounds stupid, but that's what you want it to be. You want to look at it and say, yes, that's my team's home kit. I think I'm gonna hold off on buying it until I see one in person. Just because I don't know how it's going to fit or the quality of it or anything. Because I like you, Sean. I was a really big fan of the Macron kits. I know a lot of people had issues with the sizing, but I always felt it worked fine for me. And I did really appreciate the fact that Macron hashtag said no to inflation for 7 years or whatever it was. So now, unfortunately, it is going up a little bit, but it's not too crazy still, especially for the level we're at. And I do think that it is nice to have our own nice unique kits going on year on year. I'm not sure when the away kit's coming out. I would assume probably closer to end of March, early April, than they usually do it kind of thing. Yeah, I'm excited to see how that one's looking too.
Sean, you called it a weather mat. I think it looks like the 5-pin bowling balls that you get when you go glow bowling for Forge. That orange and black muddle that always looks so awful under the black lights. I think we just need to figure out how to get some black lights into section 200.
Yeah, I think the less we could say about Forge's kit, the better. If COVID ever strikes and we're all in missing some toilet paper, I'll go out and buy a couple and spread the love around a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. I definitely do think you're right on that, Sean. That it's definitely in the top tier of the Hummel kits we've seen so far, and that's what a good safe kit will do for you, right? It's not going to do anything crazy. Which again, for the first year of the new sponsorship, is probably not inherently a bad thing. But yeah, that's all we have to say about the kits, which is obviously not the best topic for an audio podcast. Now, I see everyone's seen it, I would assume, but we can move on now to talking about the schedule, which was released. Obviously, not a ton to say, but Cavalry will open the season on Sunday, April 5th, with a trip to Vancouver Island, taking on Pacific FC. And their home opener will be, correct me if I'm wrong, the earliest home opener in the history of the club, on April 12th, taking on a rematch of the final, 2 p.m. against Atletico Ottawa, which will be a tough test to open the season, and I'm interested to see how the pitch looks that early on. But
I think it's Ian Allison kind of giving a little bit of the we could host games early here, CONCACAF. Like, we'll show you what our field looks like.
I was going to say it's either going to be an absolute disaster or it's going to be just totally fine, and it'll be 15 degrees in April. Like, it was 17 degrees this last week, so who knows? So I think Spruce Meadows can do it better than anyone else in this league. So I'd rather be watching a game there in April 12th than at the bar again. So.
Yeah, and that was great weather this last week. We could have played a home game for CONCACAF this week if we had to. I had patio beers 2 nights in a row. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I had one on my deck too, and right now we're sitting there in the snow bowl again.
We're back.
It's tough to see on a podcast, but it's coming down real good. So bringing back bad memories for sure. Nathan Ingham's, I should hire him to shovel my sidewalk here. Actually, he's done a pretty good job. So
He only get one spot though.
Yeah, and definitely the big change in the schedule this year compared to last year is no away days in Winnipeg, but we do get 2 away days in Montreal. Cavalry will take on Supra on Sunday, May 3rd in Laval, and again on Saturday, August 8th. This one's actually in Montreal on the island proper. As someone who's been to all the former CPL stadiums, I'm very excited to try and visit a new stadium. Montreal is obviously a fantastic city. I think we're going to try and get a group of people out to the August 8th game. If we can get people to out for that, that'd be pretty nice. Enjoy the beautiful city of Montreal. But yeah, if that's it for the schedule, it's obviously not a ton to say about it. Obviously with all the big... Sorry?
It does seem a little bit more balanced this year. You aren't seeing that back-to-back against Pacific. You are having it seeming to be spaced out a little bit more, which I'm really a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like when this league puts us against in Ottawa one week and then come home and face Ottawa again. We are a fiery team, so I think seeing the same theme twice in a row leads to a few more yellows than I necessarily would like. Unless we're facing Vancouver twice in a week, because then we can just see a certain David Norman Jr. get tossed out of 2 games in a row. I'm all for that.
Well, he'd be banned for the second one, but yeah. Sorry, just a couple more things on the schedule before we move on. The Cup game against Pacific FC, for the first time I think ever, will happen on a Saturday, which is exciting, I guess, to have the Cup not played midweek, at least in the first round anyway. We could maybe get a few people travel out to that one. And also it looks like, again, there'll be no games during Stampede, which is always a good thing, to not suffer through going downtown that time of year. But yeah, moving on now from the schedule. We've had a few new signings. Obviously, a bunch of players have left and a bunch of players have come. The first signing that was announced on February 5th. Was announced that Cavalry have signed former Forge midfielder Harry Patton as their 100th signing to a multi-year deal. Tom, what do you think of this one?
Well, with the departure of Shom, I think it was pretty obvious that midfield was weak and there was a big hole. And I think he's a good fit. He's got a lot, on-pitch, off-pitch issues aside, which we probably won't get into necessarily since we don't know the situation that well. He's got a lot of experience in the Scottish Premier League, played with the same club as Victor Latourie. I think they might have overlapped as well when they were there. So I think he has somewhere in the range of 150 games in that league. You can say what you want about that league, but it's a better quality than CPL. So he's got a good quality. I think he's a little bit younger. I think he's 2 years younger than Shamit Shom as well. So you have a little bit of upside if you want to keep him around for a while, keep him as a core piece. Personally, I'd rather see Shom with the club, but for a good box to box midfielder in a position where we really didn't. We really have a lot of turnover. I think it was a welcome signing. I know people will hear the word Forge and they'll go, ugh, this is gross. But I mean, he signed 3 weeks before the end of the year. He played every game he had when he was there. It was like a 6-week stint. So I don't think we can hold that too much against him. And so it's kind of one of these, I want to see him on the pitch because I've followed enough of him in Scotland to know what he brings to the table. And, I think he's a similar quality of player to Shom, even though maybe not quite at the same level of him. So.
And he did come through that Fulham U18 system. And I think that was also Jordan Brown's youth club, if I recall correctly, Sean. But yeah, as you said, lots of time in Scottish Premier League U20s. And if my brain is remembering correctly, it was a little bit of a crossover with Victor Latourie on one of his 2 stints with Ross County. All in all, I think you'll see him in a rotation with Baldissimo. I think that'll probably be your 2 players you'll see swap in between the 2. But as you said, just solid. And I don't think we can hold the fact that he played with that ugly orange team too heavily. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think it's one of those wait and see signings because there is the potential that if he isn't good, he'll just sit on the bench, sit over there with Joseph Holiday and enjoy your life over there.
Yeah, and he was playing as recently as May for Motherwell. So I mean, that's a better club than Cavalry. Even with however much you think of the Scottish Premier League, that's a better level. And he was playing pretty consistently this last year before he took a couple months and then moved back to Canada. So, the pedigree should be there. I mean, it's a higher level than Shamit Shom was playing before he signed here. So, and we are going to make the comparison because obviously that's kind of almost a direct swap. But, I think coming into it, he's coming in at a higher level than Shom was because Shom was really struggling in Edmonton before he showed up here. So, it's kind of one of those, see how he does and take it from there.
I think everybody struggled in Edmonton, though, at the end there. Say what we will about that club. But yeah, we'll have to see because it will be that rotation. You have to think Kobza, Baldissimo, Payton for your 2 ball-moving central defenders.
I think it is a very, again, it's a fine, that's a safe sign, and you kind of know, as you said, Sean, the quality that you're going to get. It's not really a sign with a lot of question marks. I did see a lot of people saying it was maybe a bit underwhelming for how they hyped it up as like the 100th ever signing. I don't really care that much about that. It's whatever. It is cool to have 100 signings for the club. To have the club have survived that long that we can have 100 signing, but
yeah, because I know there's a lot of naysayers who said the league wouldn't get to this point. So the fact that Cavs have lived long enough to make 100 signings, have numerous players play 100 games, like it's the sign that this game is not atrophying like some of the naysayers would have us think.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, having Canadian talent like Harry Patton coming in, and if he can contribute at a level to this club, I'm sure people will be pretty happy with that. Because I remember the same thing like when Shamit Shom signed, that wasn't the most overwhelming signing of all time either, right? And again, we'll just have to see what happens this season, how he plays on the pitch, and how he gets on with the team. It does mention in this article, interestingly, that he's worked with Tommy before for the Canadian U17 team, which is interesting to think about. I wonder how much of an impact it would have had on signing here. But yeah, if that's enough about Harry Patton, we can move on to the second signing Cavalry have made in the last few weeks. February 9th, Cavalry FC signed forward Nathaniel Edwards to multi-year deal. He was from Toronto FC 2. I believe, from people who watch that team. I've heard he's kind of like a Gary Semenkov style player, just on the right, where he obviously could play on the wing or play at the wing back, maybe not having that, level of defensive solidity, but providing that spark going forward. So yeah, what do you think of that one, Sean?
I think that's a good signing as well. We've had some good luck with MLS2 players or MLS Next Pro players coming in. Last year with Gerasimenko is off as a good one. The year before with Jay Herdman. So, this kind of fits the mold of looking for good young talent around the country where you maybe can't necessarily find it local. I've heard he's more of a wing back. He played a lot more wing back at TFC2, so that could also potentially be a replacement for Fraser Aird. So, I mean, we're not totally sure where he fits in. Obviously, never really having paid a ton of attention to him. So, but it sounds like they're quite high on him. He's got a lot of experience at a lower level, and so one of these players that you give a shot to and kind of give him some opportunity to get some minutes and see what he does. So I'm excited for it.
I really think he is one of those Swiss Army knife players that Tommy seems to be looking for. Because when he went back at Syracuse, he primarily actually played on the left before he went back to TFC. And you got to remember, that Syracuse Orange team is one of the top teams in the NCAA, especially on the women's side, not so much the men's side. But really, really going to be interesting to see where he is, because like a lot of the guys he played with have now gone on to Revs Academy. A couple of them are now in with some big clubs. Like I know one of his teammates from that club is now with RSL full time. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up playing most of his minutes. I don't think you'll see the whole Gerasimenko. We'll start him as a right back and then move him all the way across the pitch. But again, just seems to be one of those players that Tommy really enjoys. Because it was going back in a little bit of history with the club. Like we think of guys that we drafted like Moel Gander, who was a single position player that we heard that he was always in training camps with Cavs trying to get Mo to learn a secondary position and just couldn't do it. And that led to Mo not working with the Red and Sash. So we'll have to see what that does for the squad. But if we can avoid getting him taken by like the Jamaica U23 team like for half the year, that'll be where I'm happiest. That's as much as I loved our Moldovan missile. Did not love missing him as many games as we did to international duty.
Yeah, definitely. And it is nice to have this kind of player like on the club on a permanent deal rather than a loan. I believe it was 2027, so 2 years with an option for a third year. So obviously, if he plays well enough for us in that time, we could, maybe get a fee for him. If it all goes well, that'd be obviously the ideal scenario, or even just have him on the team for a fair bit of time. And again, that kind of player is kind of aged out of MLS Next Pro, but hasn't quite got to the level to play at MLS. I think there's a lot of upside with that in terms of the CPL, because obviously, if you're playing that much for TFC2, you're not going to be have something there, right? So it's a very high ceiling in terms of what he can provide for this Cavs team, and again, providing a bit more of that attacking spark on the right wing. Again, if we assume that Ali Musi's gone too, that's going to be another important role to be played there. But if there's nothing else to say about Nathaniel Edwards, I think we can move on to the third signing Cavalry have made in recent weeks. On February 11th, so we had like 3 in a week. Cavalry FC signed defender Curtis Ofori to multi-year deal. He is an American left back, I believe, coming in from New York Red Bulls, the academy. So having that other option on the left could be very exciting. It is interesting having the first ever full American on the team too. Obviously, we did have Cavalry legend. What was his name? Hinga Selemani. Yeah.
I think he was Ian's favorite player just because he had a really fun chant. Selemani scores a goal. I would do the whole chant, but that's not what we're here for. But yeah, interesting that we've made that first venture into the true international American, like, because as you said, only previous one was a primary Canadian citizen. Obviously, he is a dual national with a Ghanaian citizenship as well, but a short-term contract, only the single year. Or wait, no, 2 years. December 31st.
It's the same as the Edwards, yeah. 2 plus 1.
Math is hard for those of us with too many concussions.
I definitely think it's certainly good depth on the left back position. Yeah, Sean, what do you think of this?
A couple interesting things. One is just how does he slot in with Camden? Like Cavalry don't use a lot of international spots right now. I think even Klomp is not an international, nor is Toby. So I'm struggling to even, maybe Lang is the only one I could think of. So, it's kind of interesting that you see someone come in a position that maybe not necessarily is one that's up for grabs, which is at left back. But given that Camden's getting up there in years, maybe they're looking to split the minutes a little bit. One thing I've seen is that he's the youngest ever player signed by New York Red Bulls at 15 years and 122 days. So you have to think that they would have seen something special in him, because that's around the same age that Alphonso Davies went pro. And so even though he's only 20 years old, he's got 5 years of pro experience, 3 with the first team, even though he didn't see any appearances there. So there's quite a bit of pedigree there. And so it seems like one of these similar type of signings in terms of level to Nathaniel Edwards, but maybe someone with a little higher ceiling, maybe a little more high risk, high reward. But then if he does struggle at times, you do have that depth in Camden. Whether he's supplanting him as the starter or not is to be determined. But it seems like one of these throwing things at the wall type of signings where he could work out and be one of the greatest players we've ever signed, similar to like Mo Farsi. Or he could be low risk and he just sees the bench and, so be it. We took a chance on an American for 2 years and that's what it is. So, having professed to never seen him play, I think that I don't really have any strong opinions either way. So
we do have to remind ourselves that we do still have to hit that U23 minutes threshold somehow. He is going to eat up a lot of those U23 minutes.
Well, he's not Canadian though.
Oh, right. So that hits his cat. That
doesn't count as all. You're not Canadian.
Wow. I forgot. I always forget about that it has to be Canadian. Interesting.
I think our signings for U21 are Myroniak, who I think is going to take up quite a bit of minutes. Michael Harms, who you never know. Joe Holiday, who you never know. And James McGlinchey, the great James McGlinchey, who you never know. So, there's no...
And Jay Herdman. Jay Herdman's back on the roster.
Is he still U21?
No,
I thought he was.
He's aged out.
Okay.
I thought he started.
Yeah, he's 2004. So I think he was a U21 last year. I think that's when he aged out. So to summarize, it sounds like we need some U21s. So get on it, Tommy. Come on.
What about a certain defender or midfielder that is played? I think he played his last year in U Sports. Is he still?
Is that Antoniak? I think he's over too.
No, not Owen. I know Owen's over.
Are you talking about Peatgrass?
Because I am talking about Mad Max.
I think he's over too. Let me do some quick.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if he was over. This is great content. A bunch of people who don't know how old people.
If you're not tuning out right now, he's 2004 as well. April 7th, 2004. So he's aged out as well, unfortunately. So.
But I thought there was like that rule that the contract was saying before, but who knows? Tommy has people that know what they're doing better than any of us here sitting and talking. Yeah, I think that's somebody we also have to consider as potentially in that rotation if he's back. I don't know if one of us needs to break into the Macron Performance Center and go watch some of these training sessions to figure out if Max is around. But hey, I'm sure I know somebody who can get us keys to that Performance Center. And then the other person that we haven't talked about, we're not going to see him on the pitch, but Cavalry do have a new goaltending coach, a full-time goaltending coach once again. And a guy with some pedigree, Stuart Kerr, technically first name's James, but goes by Stuart, apologies. 75 appearances for Celtic in his life before ending his career over at Wigan Athletic. Has been coaching around the world, including with Vancouver FC and Orlando City. So, hey, maybe that's a little bit of a kickback from Orlando City to say, hey, we stole Minitel from you guys. We need to send someone back. I'll talk a little bit more about him then, because it kind of feels like that's the one position on this coaching staff that's kind of been bounced around more than anything else in Tommy's staff. So having someone who has obviously been around the block a few times. Obviously, he kind of left Vancouver after the whole Carl Robinson incident. Sean, you'll know that era more than I do. And then was down with Minnesota United as well, where obviously a Canadian keeper has tended those sticks for the last few years and done quite well before going off chasing that messy money. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how long he lasts with Cavalry, because, as I said, that's the only coaching staff position that seems to ever leave. It's our goalkeeping coach. Well, and Marty, but Marty was too big for us anyways.
Yeah, I think, knowing nothing about him, I've heard his name, and the fact that he comes with coaching pedigree throughout MLS, and he's played at a higher level than Cavalry himself. So he comes with a really good pedigree. Not to besmirch the good name of Jake Davis, because I think he did a really good job with Marco, and he also had some good pedigree as well. It's kind of one of these positions where I think selfishly we never really think about that kind of role as even being on the team, because usually it's just throw Marco in the net, and great job keeping there. And it's going to be kind of similar with Nathan Ingham. So you'll see how he can help Ingham come on, and maybe even bring along Joe Holiday, so that maybe he can get a start at some point. So yeah, definitely an interesting signing for sure. He's got good pedigree, so welcome on board.
And hey, we've got still have the fallback plan of the CPL keeper's #1 Twitter critic in Jordan Santiago just over at Mount Royal.
Perfect. Bring him on.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah.
You're back.
I've switched over to my other mic. Maybe it's not working now for some reason. Anyway, I think that we're almost done here in any case. But yeah, just real quickly, Sean, you are correct that Levi Lang is the only other true international at the club right now. So we still have 5 international spots, which could be a bit of fun to play with that, especially if we assume that, Moosey's gone, all the money on that would be gone, right? And yeah, just going on that, don't really think there's anything else to say unless anyone has.
No, the only other thing is we do have to watch out as the NCAA season ends. That could be another place to find some more young Canadians. So do pay attention to a little bit of the NCAA. Look at some of the Canadians, specifically some of the former Foothills boys who have made their way down to stateside. You have to make that consideration. And as well, just keep your eyes peeled with that Cavalry social media. Never know who you'll see in the background of one of their posts that we need to talk about here on the podcast.
Yeah, and then from a Foot Soldiers perspective, we're doing our supporters next supporters meetup on February 28th, where we are going to give away the award the Player of the Year award to someone who I will not name, because that will spoil the surprise. But if you're a follower of this podcast, you probably know who it is. So stay tuned to that, and you have come down and have a couple of beers with us, and have a great night. It'll be at the Elephant Castle. So
yeah, well, with all that being said, my microphone's still not working, but this is fine, I guess. It's good time for it to give out just at the end here. So yeah, thank you all for listening. We should be able to do another podcast, hopefully within a couple of weeks if anything happens. Hopefully we'll get some big new signings to talk about, and maybe start doing some power rankings.
Oh, power rankings, my favorite. So get ready for some controversy. Let's go.
Forge at the bottom.